Thank you for joining me this week. We've got a great show for you. So much news is taking place. I'm excited to share these things with you, especially in the light of Bible prophecy. Earlier this week, I had the opportunity to go on Worldview Weekend with Brannon Howse. We talked about several items, but two of the biggest items, one was the Olympics and the mockery that it's making of Christianity. Then as well, the conflict in the Middle East. What's bringing it about? What's the result? What's the direction it's heading? But since we recorded that just earlier this week, so many changes have occurred that I want to take just a moment as we begin the episode today and talk to you about several things. One of those has to do with the Olympics. You see, really, we saw the opening exercise almost kill the Olympics. And you think that's as bad as it gets. No, it could get worse. Because in the meantime, here's an incredible story. A male boxer beats up a female boxer. You know, when I was growing up, no boy would punch a girl. But to have this as an authenticated match for a gold medal, it's horrible. And I feel that we who know what morality is and we who know what common sense is, we need to say, you know what, that's wrong. And it didn't stop just with this gender dispute, but as well, remember, they showed us things that were so offensive. The fashion shows, the symbols of so many things that were anti-God and even satanic. And then it came to the Last Supper, and they spent time defending what they did, saying it was historical. No, here's how we know it wasn't historical, really, because here's the quote from the lady or the drag queen who played her part, and she was supposed to be Jesus. And on her Facebook, she says, oh yes, the New Gay Testament. So they can say that this was really a historical lesson. No, it wasn't. It was meant to be a mockery of Jesus Christ. It was meant to be a mockery of those of us who read the Bible and have Christian principles. Well, thank God there are some good things that came out of it. Look up online the Fuji Olympic team who sang praises to God, and those who stood under the Eiffel Tower, and they also had a praise and worship time. But I point these things out because you see, this almost killed the Olympics, and maybe it should have. Here's why. Romans 1 says that God gave them up to their reprobate minds. So I want you to join the interview that we had, the discussion that we had, and then we'll come back at the end because I want to tell you some things that are taking place in the Middle East that have just occurred. And I think they're also just as important as the news that we're watching concerning the Olympics. Here's the interview with Brannon Howse.
Faith, spiritual values, moral issues, government, economy, education, work, responsibility. What we think about these depends on our worldview. Now, VCY America presents Worldview Weekend Radio with Brannon Howse.
All right, welcome. Glad you're with us. Wow, there's just so much in the news that's happened since we went off the air on Friday here on this broadcast. Of course, we were covering a lot of it live on the air on Friday night as it was literally coming in. Literally, folks, we were seeing this blasphemy coming from the Olympics, the pale horse riding through the Olympics. We were seeing all this last Friday night as it was coming out all over social media. So we had the chance to respond to it in real time. Sadly, Saturday morning, my Red Alert phone, I have the Red Alert app. It tells me every time a missile goes into, a rocket goes into Israel, or when a drone or a plane penetrates their airspace. Well, I'm studying at my desk on Saturday, preparing for lesson 14 as I teach through the book of Revelation, which I did do last night, and it's already online for those that want to watch it. If you missed it live, it's available at worldviewtube.com, lesson 14, as I teach through the book of Revelation. And so I'm sitting there on Saturday studying, and my red alert starts going off and over and over. And sure enough, we found out that Hezbollah, Iranian-backed group, has killed 12 children on a soccer field. So we immediately went on air. The images are extremely graphic. A lot of people are showing them scrambled. We showed them not scrambled because I believe, again, the world needs to see what Iran is all about. Killing these Druze children. These are Druze, not Jews, Druze. And they're Israelis. And of course, it's horrific to show this kind of imagery. But again, I believe it's necessary because the world seems to deny these things. Just as we had the generals, Eisenhower and Bradley, walking through the death camps in Nazi Germany and in Poland, documenting and filming. It's unfortunate we have to show these graphic images, but the world needs to see what it is that Israel is up against. Now, again, I want to take on the critics that say that we are just simply mouthpieces for Israel, that we're too quick to defend Israel. You know what? I'm just following the Bible. I'll bless those who bless you. I'll curse those who curse you. Talking about the Jewish people, I don't agree with everything the Israeli government does. I have been one of the strongest critics of Benjamin Netanyahu long before October 7th, in many regards, including, I believe, turning over his people to be lab rats for the big pharma agenda. So we have been very, very clear here. We don't defend everything the Israeli government does or their leaders, but we do believe in God's ultimate plan and purpose for the Jewish people. And many Jews are becoming believers in Yeshua, Messiah. Many more will. This is what the tribulation is going to be all about, grabbing their attention, and it's going to fulfill Bible prophecy. But make no mistake, my friends, if there are no Jews left on the planet, you as a Gentile better be very concerned, because that means that God does not keep his promises, that he's not all powerful. He's not sovereign. He's not really in control. If he cannot keep his promises and sustain the Jewish people, bring many of them to himself so that they cry out. They cry out what? Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Folks, if the Jewish people don't cry that out, we got a real problem, right? Because they're going to cry that out. And we're going to see the second coming of the Messiah. I'm talking about the rapture now. I'm talking about the second coming. But if there are no Jews who have come to Yeshua, our Messiah, and thus they do not cry out, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, we're in big trouble as Gentiles. He's not going to keep his promise to the nation state or the people, the Jews. He's not going to fulfill his promise to them, which means maybe he won't fulfill his promise to us that no one will pluck us out of his hand. Do you want to see the second coming? Then we have to have Jews on the earth crying out, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. You have to have Jewish people going into the millennial kingdom in their physical earthly bodies who persevered and physically survived through the 7-year tribulation. So, my friends, this is a spiritual battle by Satan to wipe out every Jew that they can. And those who want to criticize us for being too much in the camp of the Jews, I'm sorry, I'm in the camp of God. And he's given us these orders. You might want to study the Bible. And if you go to a church that teaches replacement theology, you might want to leave. Otherwise, I believe you're inviting God's curse when you buy into that kind of worldview. Again, I'm just quoting the Bible. Don't crucify the messenger. Take it up with God. I'm just quoting him and his word. Now, so we had two events over the weekend. Friday night, we were able to cover some of the horrific blasphemy that was rolling through the Olympic opening ceremony. One, the Olympics committee now seems to want to cover up on their own YouTube channel by deleting it and apparently claiming copyright. Well, let me tell you, U.S. Olympics Committee, listen and listen well. I dare you to sue me because this is something called federal fair use, okay? And we have every right. You can sit and claim copyright all day long. You will lose that one in court. Federal fair use claims we can show it for the purposes of criticism and education. You can't do a thing about it, and you know it. So I'm calling your bluff. You don't like that we're showing it? Sue us. My attorney happens to defend the intellectual property of Elvis Presley estate, so I think he's pretty good at his job. He's been my attorney on this topic for about 15 plus years. So if that's who you want to go up against, this lawyer that's trusted by them and other big companies, bring it. We'll see you in court. We'll raise the funds to fight you in court, but we're not giving up our free speech, our freedom of religion to point out your horrific blasphemy of our risen Lord as you did in the Olympics. So we're going to show it despite your copyright claims, because you don't have a copyright claim when it comes to federal fair use for the purpose of criticism and education as we're doing. But apparently and reportedly, the U.S. Olympic Committee wants to hide this from their own YouTube channel. Some some social media platforms have put it out, and it's not going well for them. Well, we grabbed a lot of the footage on Friday night. We have it. We're not deleting it. We will continue to show it because we have that First Amendment right. So we're going to get to all of that. What does it mean to have a pale white horse running through the Olympics? What are they trying to tell us, folks? And then, of course, what just happened in Israel. Joining me to discuss this is none other than Dr. Rob Lindsted. Dr. Lindsted, welcome back. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, my pleasure to be with you today.
Let's start out with the Olympics first, then we'll go to Israel. So we watched, and again, we dealt with this on Friday night. We have a whole segment up at worldviewtube.com for those that want to go see the response from Dr. Woods and myself as we were on television on Friday night. But here's the video that a lot of people have seen of a pale white horse with a cape that's really the Olympic flag running through the Olympics. Now, I reminded the audience on Friday night, and I showed the video on Friday night of the London Olympics opening games in 2012, where they showed a lot of children in hospital beds surrounded by nurses, like some big, huge global problem health-wise. And then what did we have in 2020? COVID. So I don't know what these people are predicting, but I also have reports and have seen video where they had a balloon reportedly flying by the Statue of Liberty, and there's a hole in her face. It looks like parts of her have been blown up. Parts of her crown, the rays coming off her head are blown off. I'm not a big defender of the Statue of Liberty because it was given to America by the Masons out of France. But why this imagery? It seems as though the globalists like to tell us things in advance, predictive programming. I think it's part of their religious belief as well that I've explained in past programs. But with that being said, what do you make of the pale white horse? What does that represent in the book of Revelation, a pale white horse?
Well, for sure, it is a play on the book of Revelation. And the reason why they can try to backpedal it now, but they really thought they were really quite clever. And of course, they're trying to explain it away, saying, well, it was different historical things. It's not. There's probably about 20 different symbolisms that were used, from a bull, from the face of the devil. I fear what's going to happen at the end of the Olympics. Who knows how they'll close it? But they enjoy making fun of Christianity. Then when they get caught, then they spend their time saying, well, that's really not what we meant. It had this kind of a meaning. And so I think as Christians, the best thing to do is say, you know what? We're smart enough to catch the message. And we're also committed enough to say, if that's the case, then shame on France, shame on the Olympic Committee, and so we're not going to watch it. I'm one who really enjoys watching the Olympics. I like the life stories of the athletes, but I've limited what I'm going to watch because I don't have to put up with this kind of stuff. What they're doing is vulgar. The fashion show was vulgar. We could go on and on.
What did you make of the mocking of the Last Supper with this? Drag queens around little children. Many have shown the picture of the Last Supper, the famous painting, and compared it to that. I mean, this is pure blasphemy. Again, I don't want to get too graphic, but there was a guy in black with some kind of mini skirt on by a child who was wearing a yellow outfit, and he seemed to have exposed himself right there on worldwide television.
Yeah. Yeah, it was
in front of a child, literally in front of him.
Yeah. So again, these things don't happen by accident. They're planned. And even the start of the whole opening ceremony, talking about how that this came together with these three homosexual people to design the opening. You know, I refuse to make them heroes. They got caught. They got caught at what they did. And the result of that is we know that they're apologizing in this way. They're gonna edit it. Well, I'm going to be honest with you. As far as I'm concerned, there's just no sense for us to put up with that. So let's go to something else. I hope France goes broke as a result of hosting the games. I hope the sponsorship. I'm thankful for those sponsors who pulled away their sponsorship. And as Americans, you know what? We can find something better to watch than that. Like I say, it's unfortunate for the athletes, but this has got to be.
Well, look at this headline. Look at this headline. Meet the queer man behind this year's Olympic Games in Paris. That was posted an article on July 12th. They knew full well who this man was. They knew what his worldview was. And now he's planning the closing of the Olympic Games. I, like you, I grew up, as I said on Friday night, watching the Olympics. I remember Mark Spitz swimming. I think that was, what year that was. I think that was 72. I remember Mark Spitz swimming. I remember, of course, watching the 76 Olympics. I think that was a big year, of course, for America with our 200-year anniversary as a nation. Of course, in high school, we watched the 80, the 84 Olympics, Winter Olympics, the Summer Olympics of 84, I think was Los Angeles, if I remember correctly. Ronald Reagan went to that, the opening ceremonies. I mean, we watched a lot of people that worked really hard, and we watched 1980, the Winter Olympics with the U.S. Olympic team in Russia. I mean, these were iconic things to watch. As I said in my monologue on Friday night, they've even now debased the Olympics where so many won't watch. I just tuned out. I was planning on watching some of it on the replay, but not now. I'm done. I mean, and I hope so. I hope the ratings for this Olympics, and I hate it for the athletes that have tried and trained for so hard and so long. But I hope this turns out to be the biggest loss of money for NBC, that their ratings are so poor that they lose millions upon millions of dollars. God won't be mocked. Joining me is Dr. Rob Lindsted of BibleTipNow.org. Bible TIP now stands for Bible Truth and Prophecy. BibleTipNow.org. The lights went out in Paris just a few hours after their blasphemous shenanigans there in Paris. There was talk of Hamas threatening the Olympics. Dr. Lindsted, I believe at some point we are likely to see massive terrorist attacks by Islamists. I look back to the book of Nahum, and I see how God uses one group of people to judge another group of people before God takes out that group of people. So I wonder if God is going to use Islam to judge America, to judge much of the Western world. I mean, if you want to lower God's protection on your nations, plural, the Olympic Committee and all the nations represented, I think they just did that. So I would not be shocked to see a massive terrorist attack by Islamists in America, in Europe, in the UK, and God allowing that to happen. He's not the author of it, but I see that God could just step back and let these Islamists do what's in their heart, and then God will eventually turn around and wipe them out in Ezekiel 38 and 39. To me, we kind of see that in the book of Nahum, God using a group of people to judge a group of people, and then that group of people that were used to judge that people get wiped out. That pattern would not shock me at all, and I think it's actually setting up. What are your thoughts?
I think that pattern is there, and also in the book of Obadiah. Just one chapter there, and it talks about how that God is going to judge Esau for how he treated Jacob, and then it goes on to talk about the descendants of them will be judged in that way. And if you look at that short chapter, it says, I will. The judgment is by God. I think what we're going to see in this world is the fact that when we turn our back on God, and when we turn our back on the promise that he made to the Jews in Genesis 12, so what can he do? All he has to do is remove his protective hand from us. I believe right now God is protecting the United States because of how we treated Israel in the past. But why should he do that? I believe that he's protected the United States because of how we stood with God on a number of issues. So now we come to this thing, and they openly mock God. It's not just Christians who are offended. There's other people that I would say are not believers, but they were offended as well. So it's not just like, okay, here's a few preachers, here's a few Bible-thumping men, and they were offended. No, millions of people were offended, because we're not so stupid that we don't understand what they're trying to say. And so I think God will judge the people involved in this, whether it's now or whether it's later, he will judge. And I think it's also important to say, look at the rain. this big show they had. They talked about how magnificent it was going to be. It was almost ridiculous because they had to stand there in raincoats. The pianos were soaked. The singers were soaked. Then he turns the lights out on them. But you know what? God can do more. And he will do more if we continue to mock him. So what a shame. But anytime there's people who do this, there's others who lose the blessing. That's true. If our country goes to war, we all go to war when it's declared. And so, unfortunately, the athletes had to pay the price.
Yeah. Because
there were a few people that did this. It was an ungodly demonstration of lewdness, crudeness, and low morality. And so I think we're wrong if we don't say we're offended by it, because we should be offended by this.
Yeah.
This is as low as it gets. This is the kind of stuff that would never be seen in anything but the low class, low moral nightclubs. And here it is. Even the fashion show, the graphic grabbing at the crotches and everyone that looked like the trans carries the flame out there. They did about 20 things, and the whole point was to make this so that it became the conversation. It's not about the athletes. They made it about the opening ceremony. You know what? It's almost like the Super Bowl. I enjoy the Super Bowl, but let me tell you this: I don't watch the halftime because it's usually offensive.
Yep.
And I wish the Olympic Committee would decide, you know what? Let's do the games. Why do we have to have a show before the real show? The real show is the athletes. And so we made it so that the halftime of the Super Bowl is the story, and now we're making it so the opening night of the Olympics, it's just a chance for people of low morale.
And it's also pitting people against each other, which of course is always their goal, right? To divide people and have people fighting with each other. But you bring up a very good point. There are people out there on social media who are very liberal, and some of them are like, I'm an atheist. Some of them are saying like, I'm atheist, okay? But I was offended because you just, this is not proper. Even atheists are saying, this is not the right thing to do. There's no reason to mimic and mock the serious faith of so many people across the globe. So even some atheists, some humanists, some agnostics, some self-professed, liberals are saying that was just out of line, over the top, disgusting, unacceptable, not appropriate. And then you got some people that are even in the homosexual community lifestyle that are out there saying, look, guys, and they're openly admitting they're gay or whatever. They're saying, you don't do this with children. To have children involved in this and this perversion with this guy with his genitalia on full display and with a child and now all over television. So it's very interesting to have watched the responses across social media. I do want to go to the white horse before we go to Israel. Here is Revelation chapter 6, verses 7 through 8. Here's what we read. When he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature saying, come and see. So I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and the name of him who sat on it was Death. And Hades followed with him. And power was given to them over a fourth of the earth to kill with sword, with hunger, with death, and by the beast of the earth. Here's something very interesting. The Bible seems to be telling us that there's going to be something that happens here when this fourth seal is opened that will involve pestilence, animals that will also be involved in killing people, a fourth of the earth. So this weekend, I researched that, and I found myself at the National Library of Medicine, okay? And here's what it said when it came to pestilence. Accordingly, a pestilence should be an infectious disease devastating, killing a large number of people or animals. And then it went on to talk about the kinds that you can have, like West Nile virus or severe acute respiratory syndrome, some kind of hemorrhagic fever, renal syndrome. So interesting to note what the medicine sites are saying. Other avian flu strains found in poultry in North America. It's almost like they were just telling us, get ready for the pandemic, the poultry, the bird flu. Kind of like they predicted, really, I think, COVID in the London opening ceremony in 2012 with children in hospital beds and nurses and all that. Go back and watch that. We showed that on Friday night. Makes me wonder what they're telling us is coming here, Dr. Lindsted.
Yeah, they've been talking about disease X, and in some of my daily shows that we've had on the air, even the Simpsons cartoon talked about a disease X, and we've got these globalists, and matter of fact, one is Barbara Hubbard, and she actually says this, that she says, the globalists are the agent of God, and as the agent of God, we need to select, and she talked to 2 billion people. But she said, she even quoted Revelation. She said, we are the agents of God to bring about this death. So the globalists love this. And so we just find a very satanic backdrop in this. Here's the lowest level of morality. Here are people that are actually threatening the world population by saying that, let's break down 2 million people. We have them working on a disease X, and everybody knows that they're just waiting for the opportunity to drop that on the earth. It really is quite a sinister backdrop that we have. We need God's protection. And so that's why when we offend God, we really need to be careful, because his protection, his provision is when we obey God. And so that's why I think it's wonderful to obey him. It's wonderful to say, I'm going to pattern my morals after the standard that God has. And we just saw the whole world baptized in one of the ludus crudus forms of morality we could possibly have. I'm even offended at the models that walk across there. How they walk is weird. It's strange. And matter of fact, when was the last time you actually saw somebody wearing clothing that looked like what these models wear? They find the worst fashions in the world. They put them on these people and they strut across there. It's ludicrous. It's to see whether or not we have enough nerve to say, I'm offended by that. Show me something that's decent. I told you that was going to be an important interview. It's important for us to take a stand on what's right, what's moral. And if we're not a voice for God now, then what good are we? I really think we're going to see people come to Christ when we say, you know what, that's not correct. But in addition to the Olympic story, and it continues to unfold, I'm concerned about the situation in the Middle East. In our program next week, we're going to give you an update on that. But some things have happened just in the last few hours that I think are really important to know. Number one, look at this statement that's made by Iran. Iran threatens Israel following the assassination of the Hamas leader. Amazing. Israel takes out a Hamas leader in Iran. What in the world was he doing there? I'll tell you what, it shows the backing of Iran for Hamas and for Hezbollah. But that's not the only statement. Here's the president of Turkey, and he says he'll send Turkish forces to Israel if they invade Lebanon. Lebanon is the one who just massacred 12 young people, injured 28 others. There's no one that should take a side against Israel to retaliate in that death situation. But the president of Turkey says, oh, he'll invade Israel. That's interesting. Turkey. Seems like they're mentioned in Ezekiel chapter 38, aren't they? Or how about this one? Here's Putin. And Putin, he says it's unacceptable that they would do a political murder. This guy murdered 12 children. This guy injured 24 people. They've sent a total of 7,000 rockets. It's about time someone took a stand. Mr. Putin may not agree, but by the way, he's Russia. Aren't they mentioned in Ezekiel 38 and 39? And then we see the direct conflict between Russia and Israel. It's getting more and more bold, more and more aggressive. My friend, I think we're talking about the end time scenario here. And if that's not enough, look at this. The UN, the European Union, demands restraint after a Hezbollah attack on Israel that kills 12. They really wanted them not to respond at all. Unbelievable. You see, what they're saying is this: Palestinian blood is worth more than Druze blood and Jews' blood. You and I know that that's not true, but that's what the world is being told. I'm concerned because even the Houthis now, they're joining in. And they say death to America. Again, do you see how this fits into the end time scenario of the nations lining against Israel? And then I look at this one, and it says, Netanyahu says there's going to be a heavy price that must be exacted. I agree with him. One must defend their country and must defend their citizens. But there's another part of this that's equally frightening. I'm going to show you just a few clips of a video. And it talks about several things. One is China. Now, we've talked about Turkey. We talked about the Houthis. We talked about Russia. And now we're talking about China. These are all end-time scenarios, and they're all backing Iran against Israel. What a scenario. But listen to this report. I've got several clips I want to show you, but the message really is this. Is America ready to see a major war in the Middle East with China and Russia and Iran? I think you'll find this very informative.
Mac, presumptive Democrat nominee Kamala Harris's foreign policy record only offers hints of how she may handle the China threat if elected president. The Wall Street Journal writing, quote, over almost 8 years as a senator and vice president, Harris has offered only fleeting glimpses of how she would put her mark on America's tense relationship with China. As president, China strategy is among the big questions about Harris's foreign policy priorities as she races into a general election against former President Trump, whose vows to step up trade pressure on Beijing are a hallmark of his campaign. Joining me now is Gatestone Institute senior fellow, author of The Coming Collapse of China and China is Going to War, Gordon Chang. Gordon, great to see you. Thanks so much for being here. What is your sense of Kamala Harris's approach to China?
Well, we only have fleeting glimpses because she's not really that interested. We know that from Seymour Hersh's reporting that she ordered the Office of the Director of National Intelligence not to deliver to her the president's daily brief. That's the morning intelligence briefing that the president gets every single morning.
Why did she say don't deliver it? I don't understand.
Because I guess she's just not that interested in it.
Wow.
Which means that if she's going to get that 3 a.m. proverbial call, you know, the one of a crisis someplace in the world, she's not going to know how to answer it. I mean, she has been just mouthing talking points. There are no talking points for a 3 a.m. call. And by the way, there will be a 3 a.m. call early in her presidency because China almost always tests a new American president.
Now you see what I'm saying? Think about how important this is. I believe the buildup taking place right now in the Middle East is going to bring some nations there. I think it's going to include China, Russia, Turkey, Iran, exactly as the Bible says. But isn't it amazing that with this election going on, we have more talk about drag queens, we have more talk about LGBTQ, we have more talk about all the side issues, and here's a main issue that's not even being discussed. Oh, our readiness doesn't stop there. Listen to this clip.
Interesting that they would test her. How would they test her? I mean, today marks the 96th anniversary of China's People Liberation Army. They're celebrating there in Beijing. Chinese President Xi Jinping is calling to build a stronger border, a stronger sea and air defenses to protect the country's sovereignty and maritime interests. Now, you say Xi is really calling to seize territory that he thinks is China's, like Taiwan and parts of Philippines. Tell us about that.
Well, no country challenges China's recognized borders. So when he says that his borders are under threat, what he's really talking about are the borders that nobody else recognizes, like his claim to 85% of the South China Sea is blue national soil, his claim to Taiwan, his claim to Japanese islands, his claim to large parts of northern India, including the entire province of Arunachal Pradesh. So really, this is a guy who believes that China should be much larger than it is today. And by the way, for all this century, he has been repeating these Tianxia themes, all under heaven, which means that China is the world's only legitimate ruler. And since 2017, Chinese officials have been talking about the moon and Mars as sovereign Chinese territory. So that's what Xi Jinping is talking about when he says we got to protect our borders. He's talking about a borderless world, which is all Chinese.
You see, these superpowers, Russia, China, and it would be Iran, they sense that there's weak leadership. They're being aggressive because they don't think there's anyone that's really going to stop them. Right now, Mr. Biden is absent from the presidency. Right now, Kamala Harris, she's not really interested in this. She has an agenda. It seems that she's appealing more to certain little pockets of voters. like the LGBTQ, like the drag queens, like those that are protesting, more than just to the issues. I want to tell you something. I believe that we're watching, while everyone's concerned with this issue or that issue, I think we're watching an incredible buildup in the Middle East. Well, here's another talking point that I want to share with you.
You know, it's interesting because China has been so focused on their military. I mean, today, the anniversary of the PLA, and that's why they're celebrating. And that's why they've done so well in terms of pushing up a conflict potentially with the United States. What are we doing here? I spoke with Senator Joni Ernst on Sunday about the fact that the military has been depleted here because of declines in military spending. Here's what the senator told me. Watch.
You look at the last 3.5 or so years under Biden-Harris, and they have severely limited what our military can do. The Democrats have demanded equal spending for domestic projects like the Inflation Reduction Act instead of building up our military and our defense industrial base. Harris will continue with that wokeism in the military rather than ensuring that they are the strongest military on the face of the planet.
Quite frightening. Matter of fact, one report is this, that in Russia, they spend about 6% of their budget, their gross national product, 6% goes to military. They're expanding. China, they say, well, we spend 6% of ours. And the truth is, they always underestimate, they're probably spending twice that. But in America, we've cut it to 3%. Think about our preparedness, think about our readiness, and yet the world is becoming more dangerous. Now you see why I'm giving you this report. I think this is important because at this particular time, we're watching all this take place in real time. Here's another clip I want you to take and see if this doesn't help you to paint the picture of the time we're living in.
New report, Gordon, the U.S. may lose a potential future conflict with Russia and China, according to this new report from the Commission on National Defense Strategy. The commission writes that the security environment is at its most dangerous since World War II, and that the U.S. is not prepared for another global conflict. China, meanwhile, is, quote, outpacing the United States and has largely negated the U.S.'s military advantage in the Western Pacific through 2 decades of focused military investment. The commission warns, quote, without significant changes by the United States, the balance of power will continue to shift in China's favor. Gordon, this is very frightening, and I don't know that you're even hearing the Democrat Party even talk about this. I mean, is this even an issue on the campaign trail? I don't hear any conversation about this.
Yeah, there's no conversation about this. You know, at the end of the Cold War, we had a doctrine of basically being able to fight 2 major wars and a minor insurgency. Now, we can't fight even 1 major war. We have a military which is underinvested during the Biden years because budgets have been going down when you take into account inflation. You've got, and they're not training war fighting, they're training DEI. I mean, we've got a Navy which is just in calamitous condition. Air Force lacks management. The only branch of the U.S. military that's doing well is the Marine Corps, and they are not going to be a major factor in a war with China.
If you wanted to destroy America, how would you do it? One way might be to under-equip the military. Isn't it amazing that all of a sudden we're short on people in the services? I think that's partly because of the DEI. Who in their right mind wants to serve in a military that's saturated with DEI? I think it's also in the fact that they understand that there's not the proper funding going on. My friend, it is time for us to be alarmed. Time for us to be alarmed because we're coming to the time when I believe the Bible speaks about Jesus coming back. The invasion of Russia, China, Iran into Israel doesn't take place probably until the tribulation begins and the church has gone before. That's why this is such an important update for you. One more clip I want to share with you.
Yeah, this is really concerning. Your reaction. I mean, China wants to overtake the United States as the #1 superpower, and they're on a path to do so.
Yeah, no, it's very frightening, Gordon. I mean, this new axis of evil we're seeing with China and the other adversaries that we have. I mean, my question is, I think a lot of Americans feel like this current administration, now that Biden has stepped down from running again and declaring himself effectively, not at all in politics. He's an empty vessel, and I think our foreign foes see that. Do you believe that this the situation in our government right now is kind of enticing our enemies like China to kind of ramp up escalation?
Even before Biden checked out, you had 4 years of peace under Trump, and then starting with the catastrophic withdrawal of Afghanistan, you had the world in flame. Xi Jinping is under a desperate condition at home. He has a lot of domestic incentives to cause problems abroad. It could be Taiwan, could be Philippines, wherever. But the point is they do sense this weakness, and that's why the world, I think, we're seeing bad actors take advantage of this. Right now the Middle East is just in terrible condition, and that's largely because of Biden. Remember, Trump had the most successful Middle East policy of any American president since FDR.
Yeah.
Biden has had the worst.
All right, Gordon, we will leave it there. Great analysis from you as always. Thank you so much, Gordon Chang.
The time frame. We live in an incredible time. A time when we're watching the world's moral values, its common sense values, all the things that the Bible speaks of in the last days take place before our very eyes in real time. We're watching the enemies of Israel make threats against Israel, and even against us. We're almost watching the United States implode within itself. Self-destruction. Why? Because I think we've left God's word and left God's standard, and his hand of protection may be withdrawing from us. But the good news is that Christ has promised that he would come back. When terrible times come, when trouble's all around, look up, lift up your head, your redemption draws near. I believe the coming of Christ is near. And so just as I would ask America, are you ready? I would ask us as individuals, are you ready? Because I don't think America's ready for another war. But I know this, that we are indeed ready for Christ to come if you know him as your Savior. You see, 2,000 years ago, Jesus knew all this would take place. And on the cross, he died for my sins, for your sins, for the sins of the world. And he offers salvation as a free gift. We don't deserve it. We can never earn it. But he offers salvation as a free gift to anyone who would accept him as the payment for their sins. My friend, I accepted Christ as my personal Savior, and you can too. But don't put it off. Do it today. And then let's shout to those around us, our family, our friends, our loved ones, anyone who would stop and listen. Say to them, you know what, these are exactly the indicators of the last days, and we think Jesus is coming soon. Is the United States ready? Probably not. Are you ready? Well, I hope so. And I can tell you exactly how you can be ready, and that's to receive Christ as your personal Savior. Thanks so much for joining me this week. We'll see you next week. God bless you.